Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base. Will Robinson Smith will be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We are fortunate to be able to start our broadcast this afternoon with a live view of the pad here. You're taking a look at Space Launch Complex 4 East. We'll have to keep an eye on that as we are able to hop between our coverage and some views of the pad there at Vandenberg Space Force Base, brought to us in part by the European Space Agency, whose EarthCARE spacecraft is the main payload, the only payload, flying up to a sun-synchronous polar orbit, lifting off at the time you see there at the bottom of your screen, 3:20 p.m. Pacific, 6:20 p.m. Eastern, 22:20 UTC. We're now T-minus 28 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. Taking a brief look here at the mission control room there in Europe, where they will be controlling the EarthCARE spacecraft once it gets on orbit, doing some checkouts as well. That's in Darmstadt, Germany. Darmstadt, excuse me. Taking a look now at an animation of some of the EarthCARE spacecraft's instruments. It's got 2 active instruments and 2 passive ones. Right now you're taking a look at this is the LiDAR instrument. That was the CPR, the cloud profiling radar. Also works with the atmospheric LiDAR. 2 passive instruments are the multispectral imager and the broadband radiometer. And that was an animation of the 4 of them working together in concert. Let's actually take a moment to listen into this conversation as they're talking about one of the optical instruments on board the EarthCARE satellite, and she could provide a little bit more context on this particular instrument. We'll come back with you in just a moment.
That we've managed to put onto one platform. It's been quite a challenge, as well as the Japanese radar. We have 3 optical instruments, and each one has come across difficulties, right down to the smallest instrument, which is the broadband radiometer. So the radiometer operates with 3 telescopes, and they're really rather simple telescopes. They're just single mirror telescopes, each pointing to a different viewpoint on the Earth. But they use a detector which makes an image by measuring the difference between the scene and a constant temperature target. And how do we do that? We have a drum which spins around those telescopes, and it has some holes cut in it, which is the view to the Earth. So that chops the signals onto the detectors so that they can make this measurement. But that means that that drum has to spin for the entire mission for several hundred millions of revolutions at very high stability. And it has to do that with a dry lubrication technique. So really it's quite amazing and quite challenging for such a small instrument compared to the other instruments on the other satellite. And we have 4 instruments operating together, and that's what makes the real difference for our mission, the synergy.
It's so incredible to hear. And what is the meaning of EarthCARE for your personal career?
For me, it's the first time that I've managed to get to launching a satellite, because normally I move on to another mission after the development. So this is the first mission where I'm working on the launch phase as well.
Well, you definitely deserve to see an excellent launch. Thank you very much, Kotka.
So this is the Falcon 9 rocket that will be launching the EarthCARE spacecraft that you just heard a little bit about. First stage booster launching this mission, getting ready to lift off for a 7th time, till number 1081 in the SpaceX fleet. Fueling is underway on the spacecraft, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about, or excuse me, on the rocket, I should say. Here's where we are in the countdown and the milestones still ahead. Launch director gave the go-ahead for the start of prop load at T-minus 38 minutes. Fueling began with RP1, a rocket-grade kerosene on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages, T-minus 35 minutes. At the same time, liquid oxygen began being loaded on board the Falcon 9's first stage. That was followed at the T-minus 30-minute mark with the loading of cryogenic helium on board the first stage. Helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. That same process begins at about T-minus 26 minutes on the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. T-minus 23 minutes, the next milestone coming up is going to be the conclusion of second stage kerosene load. And at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds, we'll enter into the strong back chill down process. It's thermally conditioning the feed lines in preparation for the next milestone, which is second stage LOX load, which comes up at T-minus 16 minutes. At T-minus, excuse me, T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin 1D engines gets underway. That involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, and it helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, the strong back retract sequence begins. It starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transport erector at the strong back will recline about 13 degrees away. This is Vandenberg, after all. It stays in that position until liftoff. My mind is still here in Florida, clearly. Next milestone is T-minus 3 minutes when the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. And T-minus 2 minutes, LOX load is complete on the second stage. The Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch at T-minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command will be issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And then if all 9 Merlin engines ignite and are healthy, the command will be given for the Falcon 9 to be released from its hold down clamps at T0 liftoff at 3:20 p.m. Pacific, 6:20 p.m. Eastern, 22:20 UTC, or in 22 minutes and 18 seconds from now. After its launch, the EarthCARE spacecraft is going to be heading to a sun-synchronous polar orbit at 393.14 kilometers in altitude at an inclination of 97.5 degrees. The spacecraft is a partnership between the European Space Agency and the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, otherwise known as JAXA. Taking a look here at some ESA-provided video. This is part of the assembly of the spacecraft, which is built by Airbus, as you might have guessed by all the folks in their clean room get-ups with Airbus behind them. Want to thank the more than 2,600 of you that are joining with us live this afternoon. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button as we are coming into the final 20 minutes of this countdown. Allows more folks to find this live coverage as we get ready to see this second Falcon 9 rocket liftoff for SpaceX today. We're also powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So I want to thank folks like Wicked Code, Lita, Miles High, Jeff Hansen, JJ Jones, Prime Supreme, Paz Maria H, and others for your support. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, and the ability to watch all of our Cape-based launch liftoffs in stunning 4K. I realized as we got started, we had a few folks join with channel membership. So I want to welcome Rick Comstock, David Garrigus, and David Bennett for joining us with channel membership. David and Rick joining us at the pad leader level, David Garrigus joining us at the mission specialist level. Appreciate the three of you joining our little member community. I'm glad to have you with us. Speaking of channel members, you can do like Cole Cunningham, use the YouTube super chat feature. If you have a comment or question and like to be a part of the broadcast and your comment or question is appropriate to be read on our show, it's a great way to support what we do here at Spaceflight Now. And we'll do our level best to address your comment or query as we continue on the countdown. Cole says, man, you've been up for a while, since 4 or 5. Well, fortunately, not that blisteringly early, but it was right about 5:30 when we got up to start supporting launch coverage this morning, although Adam and Steven were up just a little bit before I was to make sure things were ready at the press site. So it's been a long day, and certainly appreciate the kind thoughts there, Cole. Got some questions in the live chat about where this rocket is going to be going. For those in the area of California where the rocket is, you'll know it's pretty sucked in by fog. So I'm guessing it's not going to be the greatest as far as in-person launch viewing, but in case you catch a break in the clouds, let's go ahead and talk trajectory and just mention where this vehicle is going to go, because it's an important thing to know either way. Falcon 9 rocket's going to be lifting off from Space Launch Complex 4 East, Slick 4E, there at Vandenberg Space Force Base. This is going to be flying in a fairly due south trajectory here, heading straight away from the Golden State, my home state of California. Falcon 9 first stage booster B1081 is going to be doing a flip maneuver, making its way back down for a landing over at landing zone 4. Assuming all goes well with the liftoff and landings, this will be the 19th booster landing back at LZ4 and the 314th Falcon booster landing to date. This is also said to be SpaceX's 341st Falcon 9 launch in total, and the 79th Falcon flight from Slick 4 East. Want to welcome Esteban Fode for joining us channel membership at the mission specialist level. Really appreciate that. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. We're now T-minus 16 minutes, 7 seconds and counting. Just a couple seconds away from the engine chill down, or excuse me, of the second stage liquid oxygen load beginning. So far, things seem to be going smoothly on this countdown. Fortunately, more on course for on-time launch than what we saw with the Starlink launch this morning. Unlike that mission, though, this is an instantaneous liftoff. So if for whatever reason they are not able to launch in about 15 and a half minutes, then SpaceX and ESA will have to pivot to a launch time tomorrow at the same time. Taking a peek back into some of the views from ESA. This is a video, sort of a sped up timeline looking at the path that the EarthCARE satellite took from its clean room and the Airbus facilities, being loaded up on a big cargo plane, flown across the ocean to land here or land over there in California in preparation for the launch coming up in T minus 14 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. Seeing the spacecraft being unboxed in the Astrotech facilities there in California near Vandenberg. There, they also loaded the hydrazine propellant onto the tanks of the spacecraft to fuel it. The EarthCARE spacecraft has a nominal life expectancy of about 3 years. That includes about 6 months worth of commissioning. Make sure all the instruments are working properly once it gets on orbit. Now you're taking a look at a live view of the rocket at the pad. Taking a look now at some graphics talking about the Falcon 9 rocket. That first stage, the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle, it stands 70 meters or 229 feet tall. To hear a call out that the spacecraft is now in internal power, good progress as we look at the EarthCARE spacecraft. I almost said Pace there for a second. They are fairly similar, but of course this one is from the European Space Agency. This is the spacecraft before it was encapsulated inside those payload fairings, which are at the top of the rocket. Payload fairings are 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, 17.1 feet or 5.2 meters in diameter. Second stage powered by, as you see on the screen, by that Merlin vacuum engine, producing more than 200,000 pounds of thrust. It will be fired once prior to spacecraft separation, and then it will be fired one more time to drive it back into the atmosphere to help it burn up, reduce the risk of creating unnecessary space debris. Taking a look now at those 9 Merlin 1D engines, the base of the Falcon 9 rocket, and the namesake, of course. The booster flying today is going for its 7th flight, having previously flown a number of missions. The booster first flew on August 26, 2023, when it launched the 4-member Crew 7 mission to the International Space Station. The mission was committed by NASA astronaut Jasmine McBelly, featured the first commercial crew launch where all 4 members were representing different countries. Take a look there at landing zone 4 there, which is where the booster 1081 will return after stage separation. Second launch of that booster came 39 days ago on November 10th. It was the launch of a Cargo Dragon spacecraft. That was CRS-29, launched coming just 39 days ago, or 39 days after the first launch. Also heading up to the ISS, of course. Third mission was a batch of Starlink satellites from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. That was the Starlink 6-34 mission, which launched on December 19th, 2023. That was followed by a spacecraft very similar to the one that's about to launch in 8 minutes and 8 seconds. That was NASA's PACE spacecraft, also designed to study clouds and aerosols, as well as plankton and ocean color. PACE stands for Plankton Aerosol Cloud Ocean Ecosystem. That was followed up by the 5th flight, a rideshare mission called Transporter 10, which launched on March 4th of this year. And most recently, another Starlink flight, Starlink 8-1, back on April 7th of 2024. Our T-minus 7 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. Let's talk a little bit about the flight history, or the launch timeline, I should say. Once the rocket lifts off from Slick 4 East, this is the timeline of events as we're anticipating them in a nominal flight. Of course, first will be that liftoff coming up in just under 7 minutes from now. That'll be followed by the rocket passing through max Q, or the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle, T plus 1 minute and 7 seconds. It'll be followed by a few different events in rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff at T plus 2 minutes and 19 seconds, followed by stage separation about 4 seconds after that. And 2 simultaneous events. The first stage will perform a flip maneuver, and the second stage engine, that Merlin vacuum engine, will ignite. Then at T plus 2 minutes and 36 seconds, the first stage boost back burn begins as it starts its path back towards landing zone 4. That'll be followed by T plus 2 minutes 46 seconds for the payload fairing jettison. First stage entry burn ignition starts at T plus 6 minutes and 19 seconds. Lasts for 19 seconds as well, by happy coincidence. The first stage landing burn begins at T plus 7 minutes and 30 seconds. We'll touch down at LZ4, T plus 7 minutes and 46 seconds. The Merlin vacuum engine will cease firing at T plus 8 minutes and 41 seconds. And this is a fairly short mission. So we'll see the EarthCARE satellite deploy at T plus 10 minutes and 42 seconds. Taking a look back now here at the pad, we're T minus 5 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. Is seeing a graphic here of orbital dynamics at work. We're about 45 seconds away from the strong back retract sequence beginning at the pad. Also want to thank the more than 10,000 of you who are joining with us live this afternoon. Hear the call out for strong back retract. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button. Allow some more folks to find their way on into our coverage as we continue things on. Just about 4.5 minutes away from liftoff. Seeing the clamp arms, well, a little bit hard to see with all the vapor and the fog surrounding it, but the clamp arms will be opening up, and there you see the transporter erector now leaning back away from the Falcon 9 rocket. We'll pull back about 13 degrees and stay in that position until liftoff. Take a look at the live chat here. Want to thank Jim Edgar for a very generous $50 super chat. Thank you so much, Jim. It's good to see you this afternoon coming into the evening here, and very much appreciate your support at that level. Jim says, Lisa Bean and Jim with the cats watching from Snoqualmie, Washington. Thank you, Jim. Snoqualmie. I'll try to remember that for the future. And Mark Otto gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Appreciate you, Mark, helping to continue to grow our member community here on YouTube. So we're coming into the final 3 minutes of the count on the Falcon 9 rocket. Did you recall that stage 1 LOX load has wrapped up? Final fueling milestone now is to finish tanking the second stage liquid oxygen tank. And that should conclude at about the T-minus 2 minute mark. Again, you're seeing quite a bit of clouds in the area and some fog around Vandenberg, which is not terribly surprising for this particular pad. However, SpaceX says that while it is a bit of a cloudy day, conditions are such they are able to launch. The clouds are fortunately not too thick. So to Carlo Montez super chat question, will Southern California see this? I would not put my money on yes. I unfortunately think this is not going to be the prettiest launch that Southern California will experience from Vandenberg this year. Unfortunately, unlike a Starlink launch as well, which flies in a more southeasterly trajectory and kind of hugs along the coastline, this is going pretty much due south, so pulling away from the California coast. Do have a call out that Falcon 9 is fully loaded. You're seeing the ground gas closeouts here.
You should hear a call out that Falcon 9.
We're about to come into the final minute of the count. Coming up in just about 20 seconds from now, the SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And there's that call out that Falcon 9 is in startup. Lastly, we're waiting for the launch director, or LD, to give the final go for today's launch.
So far, it's been a very smooth countdown.
LD is go for launch.
And with that call out that the LD is go for launch, we are set to launch ESA's EarthCARE payload.
You heard the man. Things are moving smoothly as they are now just about 30 seconds away.
30 seconds.
Liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. So with everything in good configuration, we're going to go ahead and step back, listening to the final 20 seconds of the count here, and we'll be back with you on the other side of the liftoff
15.
of this second Falcon flight of the day.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff. Go Falcon 9, go EarthCARE.
At T plus 30 seconds and counting, Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Slick 4 East carrying the EarthCARE satellite. Now, after clearing the tower, we tilted or gimbaled the engines to initiate a roll maneuver, which you may notice in the Stage 1 camera view. This enables the vehicle's
telemetry nominal.
This enables the vehicle's antennas to stay in the best position for communicating with the ground. In just a few moments from now, we'll be throttling down the engines in preparation for max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Vehicle supersonic. Max Q.
And there's that call out for max Q. Now, as Falcon 9 accelerates through the thicker lower atmosphere, the air density decreases, and Falcon 9 passes max Q once the air density lowers faster than the increasing speed of the vehicle. So keep an eye on the Stage 1 telemetry on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen to watch for these speed changes through ascent.
And back chill.
Good call out there. And as a reminder, the rocket typically needs to go 17,500 miles per hour horizontally in order to avoid being pulled back down to Earth and get into orbit. Now we've got 6 events coming up happening in rapid succession. This will start with main engine cutoff, or MECO, where we shut down all 9 M1D engines on the first stage. Followed by that will be stage separation, where the first and second stages separate. Third will be the Stage 1 flip, a maneuver to turn the first stage around. Then we'll have the second engine start, or SES1, on the second stage. Fifth will be the first stage boost back burn, a controlled burn that reduces the forward velocity away from the launch pad. And lastly will be fairing separation, where the 2 fairing halves will jettison away from the second stage. And all of these events should happen in just a few moments from now.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
And vac ignition.
Stage 1 boost back burn.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And there you heard and maybe even saw those 6 events that happened back to back, which again were MECO, stage separation, Stage 1 flip, second engine start 1, the first stage boost back burn, and fairing separation.
And some great call outs and views now from both the Falcon 9 first and second stages. Seeing both vehicles follow a nominal trajectory according to SpaceX. Also seeing the shorter engine nozzle there on the Merlin vacuum engine, when SpaceX does not require the full power and capability of the upper stage engine. You can use the shorter nozzle, which is a key benefit for SpaceX, as it also saves SpaceX some money on manufacturing and production. Merlin, or the Falcon 9 second stage, will only take about 10 minutes and some change in order to get the EarthCARE spacecraft to where it needs to go. Again, heading up to a sun-synchronous polar orbit today. Falcon 9 first stage booster is making its way back down towards Vandenberg. The entry burn is coming up in just under a minute now, or just about a minute, at T plus 6 minutes, 19 seconds. Looking up into the inner stage on the Falcon 9 first stage on the left-hand side of your screen, Still getting some great views of the second stage Merlin vacuum engine. The reason they're toggling from one side to another is to ensure to the engineers that they are getting even burning on that Merlin vacuum engine. So they will move back and forth from one side of the Falcon 9 second stage to the other, excuse me, just to make sure that things are consistent. That entry burn is about a few seconds away from beginning on that first stage. You hear the call out, and we see it on your screen. That entry burn now underway. This burn will last just about 20 seconds or so. Setting up for the landing burn, but you can see the speedometer on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen beginning to, or continuing, I should say, to drop rapidly as the booster makes its way back down towards landing zone 4. With the entry burn shut down, the next milestone we're looking for coming up in just about 30 seconds is the start of that landing burn, which comes up at T plus 7 minutes and 30 seconds. First stage landing comes up about 15 seconds after the landing burn begins. Looks like we've got a little bit of soot covering up that first stage onboard camera, obscuring things just a hair, but you can still see those hypersonic grid fins. Landing burn looks like it's getting underway now. And you see there a good landing of that booster 1081 back at LZ4. Burn on the second stage continues to last. That will wrap up in just a few seconds here. This will be SECO 1. This is the only burn that will happen prior to spacecraft separation. The vacuum engine has now shut down. Got a call out for a nominal orbital insertion. Coming up now, we're anticipating the EarthCARE satellite to deploy T plus 10 minutes and 42 seconds. And we're getting some great views of that EarthCARE spacecraft. And back now on the shorter engine nozzle. So just because we got the booster landing, don't go away just yet. We've got the deployment of the spacecraft coming up in just about a minute or so. Again, this is a fairly short mission, so you'll see the full thing in under 15 minutes. Again, spacecraft separation coming up at T plus 10 minutes and 42 seconds. So we're now less than a minute away from spacecraft separation. Once the spacecraft has separated, again, there is about a 6-month commissioning phase in order to check out the spacecraft. Of course, first it will deploy its solar panel, which you saw in some renderings earlier on in the broadcast. It will power up its batteries. begin to establish communication with some of the ground stations. Excuse me, I believe that process starts about 5 hours after the spacecraft is deployed. And there it goes. EarthCARE, now flying free, preparing to study the clouds and aerosols around our globe to help us better understand our climate. One last look here at the headquarters in Hawthorne, California, and mission control for this flight. Before we go ahead and talk about our mission stats for this flight, let's go ahead and listen back into ESA for just a moment as they're talking about the next steps for this spacecraft.
Very, very soon. The satellite itself is now going to fly down towards Antarctica, come up under the South Pole, and we will pick it up again, as I say, in around 40 minutes from now at our ground station in Hattebestuk in South Africa.
Oh, amazing news. Really incredible. Now, with me is Torsten Fehr from ESA. He is the EarthCARE mission scientist, and he looks very happy.
Kara, I'm very happy. I mean, this is an emotional roller coaster, and I guess that everybody in the room and also the viewers online, I mean, for us, this was just such an exciting moment, and to see this this perfect launch and the deployment of the satellite. I mean, this is just, and I'm talking much too fast, but I'm so emotional. Seriously, to see this after so many years that we've been waiting, after hundreds, thousands of people have been working on the satellite for such a long time. With the scientists, of course, it's a mission scientist. This is dear to my heart, supporting us and driving us through all of those years with our Japanese partners. This is just fantastic. I have to say, this is, I think, probably one of the greatest moments in my professional life ever. It's fantastic. I cannot be more happy at the moment. We still have some time to go. We're not there yet, but we've done a big leap forward.
Incredible work. I mean, this is fantastic news, and the excitement is infectious. Science is on a good trajectory. Thank you so much, Torsten.
Thank you, Kara.
We're going to go ahead and peel away now at this point. Just wanted to hear briefly from the mission scientist on EarthCARE. And with that, let's go ahead and pivot, as we always do, take a look at our mission stats as they currently stand. Taking a look at the mission stats now. This was the 7th flight of this particular Falcon 9 booster, tail number 1081 in the SpaceX fleet. This was SpaceX's 341st Falcon 9 launch to date, the 56th Falcon 9 launch of 2024, the 57th for SpaceX of this year, including the 3rd integrated flight test of Starship. This was the 116th orbital launch in the last 365 days, the 79th launch from Space Launch Complex 4 East, and the 147th overall launch from that pad the 18th of the year from Vandenberg. Taking a look at the bar chart where it currently stands, here's the progress SpaceX has made on the year. Just a stone's throw away from surpassing its total number of launches in 2022, still in the month of May. So quite a bit of progress in just the last couple of years. Looking at some recovery stats, this was the 19th landing at LZ4, the 69th landing to date, and the 314th Falcon booster landing so far. Finally, some industry stats. Again, this was the 18th orbital launch from California, the 59th orbital launch from U.S. soil of the year, the 64th orbital launch from U.S. rocket company, and the 104th orbital launch from around the globe. Here's where the pie chart currently stands. The U.S. standing at 64, representing 62% of the pie. China with 25 missions on the year. Russia with 7, Japan with 3, India, Iran with 2 apiece. North Korea with a launch attempt, but that rocket failure yesterday, about 2 minutes into flight, means it gets the double asterisk, along with one of Japan's flights so far this year. I want to thank Kathy Stills, one of our wonderful channel members, for a $2 super chat. And folks, that will just about do it for today's second launch of the day. It's been quite a busy one for us here at Spaceflight Now, and we sincerely appreciate you spending part of your day with us on this launch. Hopefully you're also with us this morning for the launch of the Starlink 6-60 mission. Coming up in the not too distant future, we're looking at another Falcon flight, potentially as soon as this Friday. That window opening up at about 6:45 p.m. Eastern time. So be sure to join us back here with live launch coverage starting an hour before liftoff. That mission going off of Pad 40 here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. And of course, we are very closely watching the progress of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft, which is set to launch no earlier than June 1st, according to United Launch Alliance. They put out their L-4 weather forecast, and right now, weather is 90% favorable for a launch of ULA's Atlas V rocket supporting Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. And in a 24-hour backup opportunity on Sunday, weather also 90% favorable should they need to pivot. Some of the milestones we're looking at later this week, of course, the rocket will be rolled out from the vertical integration facility out to the pad. That's set for this coming Thursday. And then we should get another press briefing on the status of the mission following a launch readiness review that's coming up later on this week. And of course, that is if everything is ready and on track for a launch on June 1st. So we will be sure to provide you with updates as we learn them. So head on over to spaceflightnow.com for the very latest. Subscribe to Spaceflight Now here on YouTube if you haven't already as you head out the digital door. And that will go ahead and do it for us on this particular mission. We saw good deployment of the EarthCARE satellite. So we're going to go ahead and close things up. Our thanks to our editor, Stephen Young, for providing technical support for this launch. Our photographer getting some well-earned rest this afternoon after a very early launch coverage morning. They'll be back in action again coming up for the next orbital flight coming up this Friday with that Starlink mission I just mentioned. Most of all, thanks to you for wherever you're watching from. Whether you're watching with us live or you're catching this on the replay, we certainly appreciate your time and attention. And we look forward to seeing you when next we meet again. So for all of us here at Spaceflight Now, be good to others, be good to yourselves. I'm Will Robinson Smith, and ladies and gents, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.